All right, it's Tuesday morning, day after our holiday. I hope that you all had a good weekend, a safe weekend as well. Saw a whole lot of good Patriot stuff going on out there, which is really cool. So I want to give you all props. But today I want to talk about something kind of specific. I had homework for myself this weekend where I wanted to read, and I actually took time out. My wife was like, "You are such a nerd," but I just wanted to read, and I decided I had this idea. Like I was like, okay, if there are people out there who are making some crazy claims about ethnicity, everybody's racism, everybody's racist, and there are these ways that they actually speak to people, which really speaks into a manner what we call cancel culture. I had this idea, like, so hypothesis, like, well, is this new? Is what's going on new? Has this been used elsewhere within American culture? And so I just had this idea. I was like, well, let me look up this dude, okay? So it's going to sound weird to you, but I actually started reading, and I'm about halfway through The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. Well, I also started reading this other book, make sure I get the name right here. It's called Darwin's Leap of Faith, and that's by Ankerberg and Weldon. And I also started reading this other book called, Capitalism and Freedom by this other guy named Milton Friedman. Well, anyway, like, again, I for pastime, I like to read. So, and some of you guys know that already. I'd stay away from a lot of other stuff, but I just like to read. Well, in reading that, the Darwin's Leap of Faith, and believe me, like, reading through The Origin of Species actually is pretty interesting, because I mean, there's some things about we talk about pigeons and sheep and horses and stuff like that, and just the breeds and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to study what the guy was doing. However, there's some things in there that really were stuck out to me about natural selection and what he was stating. And this idea of nature selecting the correct species to move forward throughout all of time, I guess they call it billions of years. It just doesn't seem, of course, I'm a Christian, so it just doesn't seem, first off, it just doesn't seem like it's even possible. But, I don't want to just negate it. That's why I want to actually know what it is. And so that's why I'm reading it. But then reading this leap of faith thing, and this is what I want to get to. It made me think about, why is it that people are so adamant about Darwin's theory of evolution? And how has that actually impacted the culture, American culture, and the world in what this idea actually is? And does everybody all align with it? And that's where I found the discrepancy, okay? There, in this chapter 6 of this book, Darwin's Leap of Faith, was actually incredibly interesting to me, because it showed that it was an idea and a method used in politics within academia that kept other ideas out of the mainstream within the learning, the sphere that kids would learn about science and the sciences. And I didn't really know that. What I learned was that there are several individuals, whether they're creationists or individuals who are actually a little more intellectually honest about Darwin's theory, who were actually evolutionists, and maybe they still are to this day, but they did what I do, okay? And I'm not the only one that does it. Just think critically about stuff and just, try to give as much intellectual honesty as you can. They ask questions. They ask questions about the goo, and they ask questions about, they just ask certain questions. I'm not going to get into, I want to dive into this whole treatise about this whole thing, but they just asked questions, and they were legitimate questions that kind of started poking holes through some of the theory. And I respect that, because if you're able to just ask questions and seek out the truth, then you're really being a scientist. But if you hold to this dogma that actually says this has to be the truth and nothing outside of naturalism really weighs in to be true, then you're not really being a scientist. You're being kind of more of a like religion, really, because you remove all other spheres of reality just so that your idea stays intact. And that's what, a lot of Christians, we need to actually understand. We need to ask questions too of our faith, which will really help us to really own our faith, okay? So, but let me get back to this, okay? Let me get back to this, because it's going to be a little bit abstract. There's something in this that I discovered that these scientists encountered when they brought up their questions, and they experienced what was known as, from like 1960s all the way up to present, which is cancel culture, where their ideas, their studies, the information that they had was either squashed, it was people made fun of it, they ridiculed it, but then they silenced it. And that's what I found interesting. This is not something that's new. What we're experiencing right now in mainstream culture, especially with all this ethnicity and race, everybody's a racist stuff, you have what's called cancel culture. And cancel culture is using its power, what they believe to be power, to push an agenda, which I believe is the same thing that happened with Darwin's theory of evolution, that people were pushing this idea because they did not want to put in anywhere in the sphere of science, the idea that there might be an actual intelligent design. Now, again, people can debate that all that they want to, and I know where I come from in that, but what I want to do is I just want to be intellectually honest about it. What if there's another story out there that shows something to be different? And I just want to hey, I'd rather go and confront it than stay keep myself away from it. So I just wanted to learn, and I just found this stuff out. Now, why is this important to you and me? As you go through what we're going through right now as a society, American society, you have to ask questions about why people want to keep certain information from getting to the mainstream. That's what Google's doing. It's what Facebook is doing. It's what Twitter does. These massive, corporations that try to keep things silent. We saw what happened with pharmaceuticals and hydroxychloroquine. We saw that information was squashed. And we're going to probably have to find a way and a means around it, which I think that there's other platforms out there which are doing a really good job at trying to provide a different platform for people to exchange information. Well, the exchange of ideas is what actually is freedom. And being able to debate those ideas is freedom. But to squash ideas so that a narrative, a political narrative, is only brought to the fore, that means that there is an authoritarian means of informing the people, of keeping them silent and keeping them uninformed about something else. And you have to be the one to discover and find the information, which is why I've always encouraged you to read. If you want to read this book, it's called Darwin's Leap of Faith by Ankerberg and Weldon. It's a pretty interesting book, but chapter 6 really got to me. And I want you to do this, okay? There's times that we can have, to go back to video games and just chilling and just vegging out on Netflix and all that stuff. Right now, we're being called to something different. And I think that if you're, my wife calls me an early adopter for a bunch. She actually called me an early adopter, which is hilarious, especially because you know my wife. She never gives me that kind of credit. But she said, you're being a kind of an early adopter with some things that I don't think people are ready for. Well, we need to be more aware and more informed about the reasons that people believe what they believe, so that when we understand why they believe it, we're able not to give an answer and to give a forceful rebuke of it. We're able to understand why they believe what they believe. So then we can able to stand in that place and really have compassion for them, because the whole idea that Darwin, I think, and Huxley, these guys were really actually coming from was that they didn't want to face God. And they wanted the universe to be without God, which is what naturalism actually is. They just don't want to face the divine intervention and implications of what that actually means about a creator and the character and nature of that creator. So I want to just drop that on you this morning. You and I have an opportunity right now to really become more informed, to really take steps to understand what it is that the people on the opposite side understand and know. They're not going to do that for you, but you can do that for them, because there's people, and this is what I found interesting, okay? The scientists who were intellectually honest, they change sides. They change sides. There are people who hold to the dogma of Darwinism, okay? There's people that do that. And there are people who made the big leap. And they said, you know what? I'm leaving this and I'm going to go explore what the other side actually says. And that's where we're finding right now. You're finding a lot of people who are mainstream, mainline Democrats, blue dogs, right? Who are actually asking questions and who are saying, you know what, let me just see what's going on. Why are we saying these things about these people? That doesn't seem to be fair. The reason why is they're being intellectually honest about what they're experiencing. And you have that opportunity to be a person with open arms to discuss with them what freedom actually is versus what they believe freedom to be, which is control. Because these people, they just want to control. The folks who are downright, they just, you can't tell me nothing. Those folks that you're screaming on the TV, they don't want to be told anything. But there's people on that couch, millions of people on that couch, who are open to hear the other side, because they're realizing that they're being told something and they're told not to look at information. They're told, just look at this thing over here. Look at this thing over here. Don't worry about what they say over there. Just look at this thing over here. Understand this. People's eyes are being open. And the reason why they're being open is because they're being intellectually honest about what's happening in this nation right now. So you be that bridge. But understand, you gotta take some time and actually discover what's out there. And if you don't, you'll get used. All right, have a great morning. Take care.